Hello, everybody, and welcome to another talk here. Today we're thinking about practice ideas and concepts, and I'm going to have a little bit of a theoretical talk today, but I definitely want to make this a practical and sort of a practice kind of create a practice kind of avenue for folks on this talk. So picking up the seal string here a little bit. So if we have a tonal center, let's say I pick out a chord like B minor. We'll start out today by we're going to try to hit on all three tunes today. And so we're talking about Tras da Porta. Right? So we have a B minor chord. So one thing to think about anytime you have a chord and let's say it's just completely out of context, like let's say I didn't even mention that tune there. We have a chord like this. This could be in, well, just this chord itself is found in the three different tonal centers, let's say. Okay, so it could be the one chord in minor. Okay, so key of two sharps. Okay. Now it could be the 5 chord in the key of E minor. That would be 2 sharps. Or sorry, excuse me, 1 sharp. So we're in 2 sharp. We're thinking about 2 sharps. If this is the 5 chord in E minor, that would be 1 sharp. Okay. Now what if it's let's say the 2 chord in a key? Okay. So then it could be the key of 3 sharps. So let's survey that for a minute. We talked about 1 sharp, 2 sharps, and 3 sharps. Right? So when we think about playing this, we want to be able to play it, let's say, in all, let's say a scale. So let's say we want to, let's say, be able to associate. So here's your practice idea, and mine too, which is to, let's say, okay, play a natural minor. Think about, what sharps are there. So that's 2 sharps. Okay, so let's say we're in key of 1 sharp. Okay, then we're gonna have now the C natural, right? Okay, and that's kind of how we're coloring that in. All right, so let's say kind of moving that other direction from key of 2 sharps, another closely related key there, key of A major. And then we'll say, okay, well, color that in with a different sound. Okay, and notice that each one of those centers, let's just focus on major here for a second, is going through the circle of fifths. So A major, key of 3 sharps, D major, key of 2 sharps, and then G major, key of 1 sharp. Okay. Now they all have their respective relative minors, right? So D relative minor is B minor. A relative minor is C sharp minor. Okay. G relative minor is E minor. Right. So in the course of a song, we might have a tonality, but it may modulate to closely related keys. It may borrow chords from those closely related keys, or it might go to a very distant key. But it's pretty common for things to move to a closely related key. All right, so let's take a look at the lead sheet here on Atrás da Porta. Okay. All right, so I wrote out this lead sheet, and I placed two sharps. We're gonna talk about kind of what my decision making on that was. And one thing you can do in a tune is take a look. This kind of depends on the tune. We'll see this a little bit later with Blues for Alice, but in sort of a longer form like this, let's take a minute to just go through, and some of these are not even labeled, but and write down certain measures. So those will be certain points where there's probably some significance to what the chord is landing on, right? Okay. So measure one, obviously that's going to be significant, right? So it lands on E minor. Measure 9 also lands on E minor. Okay, measure, let's see, 17 lands on B minor. Measure 25 lands on G major. Okay, now this section becomes a little odd here because we have this section that has what 5 groups of 4. Okay, so we're gonna step over to actually we're gonna give 29 and 33 a little bit of significance here. Okay, so we land on B major. Okay. And then G sharp minor. And then here on measure 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. So these are all odd numbers. 37, we land on B minor. We're kind of starting a new section. This is very similar to what we just had. All right, and then we have measure 45 landing on G major. And then, say 53 and 49 landing on B minor. Okay. So let's take a look at that and we'll kind of do some listening here as well. So we start here on E minor. Okay, and we get what do you hear here as a tonic? Well, I'm hearing this note. Okay, so let's go through that all again as well. So we have this chord. Okay. So right now, even though we haven't played any B minor chords, there's no B chord there so far, right? But when we play through that and we hear it, we hear the kind of the function of it, at least to my ear, and tell me if you're hearing something different in the comments, but I'm hearing B as being a center, right? Like a tonal center or a tonality, right? Now it's interesting what happens next because we don't actually get B minor. And this is kind of almost part of the game, you know, of music and harmony is to give the listener a sense that something's going to happen, and then kind of not doing it. I mean, that's like in writing. If you write a story, a book that's kind of captures your attention, or a sitcom or mystery story or something. That's half of it is like developing something, developing a character that somebody likes, and then kind of they're not getting what they want or maybe deserve. So we end up with this kind of pulling us back away, and then returning to this chord, the E minor. All right, so at that point, I would say we need to dig a little deeper into the tune to really kind of establish things. But when I'm hearing that, I'm already hearing the B, even though we haven't had any B minor chord yet, and B minor, right? All right, so we have, okay, so in the Ellis Regina chording, we have E minor over D. Okay, and then we kind of go in this direction again. Okay, now the tune that I originally transcribed, or performance I originally transcribed, goes to B minor. All right, but on this recording it goes to G major 7 with a sharp 11. Let's listen to the aural effect of that. So E minor 7. This. It's a little bit surprising, but it's not so different from B minor, right? It has a mediant relationship, so it's a submediant of B minor. So it's a major third below B minor. And if you let's say play just kind of a real straightforward G major 7 chord, we actually see that there's a B minor triad in that, right? Now, what we have that follows G7, F sharp, 7 sus, to F sharp 7, excuse me, and then we get B minor. And at this point, we have this melody. Okay, so we get this B finally in the melody, get the B chord. Okay, we get B7 or F9, and then the 4 chord. So when I think about tonality, or when we think about that, we could think about where does it consistently gravitate to. Okay? So we're seeing a lot of instances where it, like that B section, it just tends to want to gravitate towards B. Okay, measure 25. We get F sharp 7, so that's oftentimes a 5 of the B minor. But we get the submediant of B minor. So we get kind of tricked a little bit on that. We get pulled away from that sound. We get something similar, but it's not exactly it. Okay, and then we get another 2-5. Right? Now our ear has become accustomed to hearing sort of this key of 2 sharps and B minor And then all of a sudden we get major. Okay, so it's a pretty dramatic shift there. So there I'm playing B major 7. Okay. All right, now we think about, again, so some of our mediant relationships, again, just kind of words coming up quite a bit, but so we have the B minor, okay, and the G major, right? So there's our relationship. Look at that G sharp minor 7 flat 5. Okay. So if you take, and this goes into our practice ideas and concepts, when you practice, especially in minor, we want to be able to think about minor in real flexible terms, especially from the 5th up. So we could say, okay, we have a sound like natural minor, which includes the G, right? But we may also want to think about maybe melodic minor. That includes G sharp, half diminished, right? So we can see that is a submediant, okay? And then you can start talking about and thinking about chromatic submediants. Okay, so anyhow, getting back to this, we get to the B major, which you can call the parallel major, right? So we have the relative major, which is D major, which I believe we'll see come up, and then we have the parallel major, which is B major. Okay. Now this one, I could have changed the key signature to 5 sharps. That would have been fine. I just left it alone with the key signature, but here we get really clearly B major, right? We have a 1, a 4, 7, 3, or 2, 5 to the relative minor in that tonal center. Okay, and then we get this. And then in the Ellis Regina recording, we get 2. It's a really nice effect, right? D6/9, right? Well, what is that? So that is a mediant of both B minor and B major. Be considered chromatic mediant of B major, right? Because it's not in the key, but it still has a relationship there. Okay, but it is the relative major for B minor, right? So that's sort of a diatonic mediant relationship for B minor. Okay, so the ear, gets these suggestions and these movements. Okay, and then we go F sharp 7. Once we play D major, D6/9, our ear is already kind of most likely thinking back to 2 sharps, right? Because that's that chord is in the key of 2 sharps, right? And then we get this F sharp 7 again. So once we get to that measure, we're really pulling away from that major mode there, that parallel major. Okay, and then we get what we want. B minor, but not for long. And then we get 5 of the E minor. Okay. So we might be hearing this as a final. If it sounds final, if it feels like a note is final, then that most likely is the tonic. But We don't get that. We get the G major, right? So it's a related chord. And then we head back. Okay. And then at this point, we consistently are heading back to B minor at this point. Okay, now both the chord symbols here in parentheses and in the regular ink is real common progressions for minor keys, right? So we have this kind of, right? Or even, you might have even heard little things like, it's in a lot of tunes. So that is pretty clearly gravitating back to the B minor. Okay, and we need to do a little work on the other tunes here. So, but before we go into that, let's just kind of do some kind of takeaways, which is, when you're working with in your practice session, really kind of any moment in time, think in terms of, or I would recommend thinking in terms of sharps or flats, key signatures, okay? And maybe kind of getting away from, even from saying, okay, this is in this key, or this is this key, and all that. Just like key of two sharps, right? And that just gives you a collection of notes. So that's going to give you kind of a practical level of things. So one thing you can do is just, pick out a chord and then move outwardly and see if you can kind of find the context and identify what tones are there. So when it comes to minor, it gets a little bit maybe more complicated, right? Because with B minor, okay, this is kind of our somewhat stable sound on minor, right? So it's sometimes called the minor scale. Okay, but we may have, and this is where it does get a little bit confusing. If something is in the key of B minor, we might think of the key of two sharps, right? Okay, so that's that sort of natural minor sort of sound. So we need to keep it flexible, especially with minor, right? Because we have different scales for different circumstances there. So that's harmonic minor. We have the melodic minor. Right. So everything that we play, if we can kind of achieve a little bit of a center on it. So let's talk about Blues for Alice a little bit here. And let's pull that up. Let's look at this intro. This intro is pretty interesting. So we have this. So what is that? Okay, so that's kind of an F sound, as you see. Okay, only get two notes there, but the chord is kind of A flat. Okay, and then we get, now just out of context, that is an A flat major triad, but our chord is D. Okay, and then we get this. Now this is a G flat 7. So what's happening there? We're getting sort of a clever way of moving around the key. You could even say mediant relationships, but and what do you hear? Right? Even though we've gone on those kind of outside the tonal center, right? Probably your ear is going to gravitate and say, okay, this is the center. This is it right there, right? Okay, so that's a good example right there. Even just the intro. Okay, so now this tune is a little bit of a shorter form. So this is one where area, you know, want to take a look at one, measure one. But that doesn't mean it's going to be in that key. Probably know that it does happen to be the case, but so here we have measure 5, okay. And we have 9, right? Okay, so we have kind of 3 lines here, each with 4 bars. We know it's a blues. Okay, so you see, we start on the 1 chord, and that's kind of been established, right? Because we had the intro. If we work backwards from this B flat, right? We can see that it goes kind of through the circle of fifths, right through the second measure. So we're kind of working backwards. So we say, okay, B flat. We end up on B flat. How do you get a 2-5 to B flat, C minor, F7? How do you get a 2-5 in front of C or C minor, D minor, G7? How do you get a 2-5 in front of that? E minor, A7. Okay, so with circle of fifths heading down, a series of 2-5s. Okay, so we have a tonal center, F. And then we have this progression that is leading us to the 4 chord. Okay. All right, and then if we take a look at, I'm just kind of looking ahead here a little bit, at the 9th measure. Okay, we have G minor. Okay, well, where does that fit in? Well, that's the 5 of the C7. So C7 is of significance there because it's the 5 chord, right? And then that is going to take us to F. So if we have major chords, we have 3 major triads in any given key area. Okay, 2 of those have major 7s, and 1 has a flat 7, dominant 7 type chord. Just strictly, if you take the key of 1 flat, like F, key 1 flat, that's what you're going to get out of that limitation of notes. So that's what you have, right? And then, so you can see it touches on all 3 of those, and it gives us these same kind of chord qualities that we're expecting. Now this one's kind of interesting how it modulates from, or leading up to, the C7, right? Remember, we had these whole steps, circle of fifths, going earlier, going to the 4 chord, but in this case, we get the 4 minor, which is really common in a lot of tunes. Okay. Instead of this F, I'm going to write another little progression here that we can try. So let's say A minor, just to kind of illustrate my point here. A minor to D7. Okay. All right, so we have these 2 5s going down by half steps. which gives a different impression, right? Than it does with the whole steps that we had in the circle of fifths there. All right. So you want to take a tune as a whole and try to identify that note that you're hearing as where everything gravitates toward. I think gravity is kind of a good word on this. What does the ear hear as a tonic, as the note that it would maybe end on, or it doesn't even have to end on it. It doesn't have to begin on it. But it's that note that we hear as the center, as the tonality. Right? Okay. So as you're going through that tone, just to kind of keep to our theme, when you go through, you think, okay, E minor 7. What is our tonal center there? Right, we already have a B natural, okay, which is a little outside of what we would have from key of F, right? Because this has a B flat. And you get A7. So it's a 2/5. So in a loose sense, you might say, okay, we got a 2/5. By the time we get to the 5, we do kind of have this minor sort of sound. Okay. All right, and then we get D minor. Right, going to here. So remember that when we talk about minor, the relative minor, there are different instances of that sound, right? So the minor scale, okay, would have a B natural in it, right? The natural minor scale would have a B flat, right? So then you could think of maybe my collection of notes or your collection of notes on the E flat. Okay, maybe that's more of like the natural, D natural minor. And then the A7, okay, maybe more of the D harmonic minor kind of sound. So we're just really kind of thinking about those collection of notes. That's probably the more challenging part of this, but here we get kind of 2/5 key of no flats, 2/5 key of 4 flats. Sorry, key of 2 flats, excuse me. 2/5 in the key of 2 flats. Okay, next up, when we go to minor, 2/5 in the key of 4 flats. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. 2/5 in the key of 1 sharp. 2/5 in the key of 6 flats. And then a 2/5 in the key of 1 flat. Okay. So clearly our tonic is F there. So let's take a quick look at Days of Wine and Roses here. Now we probably won't spend a lot of time on this because we already did kind of an analysis of this, but all right. We see, when you have sheet music, it's very helpful. Obviously, we have 1 flat in our key signature. So typically, when you see a key signature, you're gonna think about automatically. You want to start thinking about the relative major and the relative minor of that key signature. So F or D minor. We see a pretty strong indication at the beginning that we start on F. We end on F. We have a 2/5 back to F. So as far as sheet music is concerned, key signature starts and ends on F. It's most likely in F, right? But again, try to go through that process of what is a single note that this always tends to want to gravitate back to, and then decide that as your kind of tonal center, right? Okay, and even just playing the chords, you'll probably hear it has a certain impression, okay, when we do that, and we hear that F, right? So it's a certain note that everything kind of gravitates towards. Okay. All right. So let's take a quick look just at good old Wikipedia. So I was glancing at this a little bit before the talk today. So tonality. So we have tonality is the arrangement of pitches and or chords in a musical work in a hierarchy of perceived relations. All right. Stabilities, attractions, directionality. Okay. So yeah, relationships, things that are stable, yeah, attractions, and direction. So it's sort of, kind of a phenomenon, and I like to use the word gravity, and making a certain direction or making a certain chord progression can leave things feeling like they're somewhat unstable, maybe, and then they might reach a stable place and then kind of get kind of moved around here and there. Okay. In this hierarchy, the single pitch or triadic chord with the greatest stability is known as the tonic. So that's kind of where I'm talking about. Where does it gravitate towards? Right. The root of the tonic chord forms the name given to the key. Right. So C major chord, C, E, G, and they have the root note of that. All right, like we talked about, simple folk music songs often start and end on the tonic note. Most common use of the term is to designate the arrangement of the musical phenomenon around a referential tonic. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Like, what do you hear as where it goes or where it wants to go? Okay. So European music from 1600 through 1910. Contemporary classical music from 1910s to 2000 may practice or avoid any sort of tonality, right? So that was kind of a big pull towards that. But harmony in almost all Western popular music remains tonal. Harmony in jazz includes many, but not all, tonal characteristics of European common practice, period. Also known as classical music. Okay. So just kind of wanted to go through that a little bit, just to give it maybe a different perspective on it from what I was saying. But so we took 3 tunes and took a look at taking and listening for the tonic. Okay, so this kind of the activity is, and this is a good practice idea, I think, is to play some chords from a progression, and try without bias somehow, or maybe an unfamiliar tune, or maybe try to obscure the title somehow or something, and go through the progression and just kind of ask yourself, well, what note would I identify as the tonal center? All right, everybody. Thanks for watching this video, and if you're listening to this on the podcast, check out the member area on YouTube, youtube.com/fretprints, and you can also visit fretprints.com to watch a video on today's talk and other talks. All right, everybody. Thanks again, and I will see you all in the next one.